There's a point in some advisor change meetings where the client isn't really asking for more information first. They're asking whether this is going to be handled with care.
And that's why the first 90 seconds matter so much. Those first few moments often decide whether the client starts to feel steadier or whether the whole transition starts to feel more uncertain.
Because the client may sound polite, reasonable, even open to the change, and still be carrying a much bigger question underneath all of that. Do I still feel known here?
This is Advising Humans, where we talk about the human side of advice, especially the part that doesn't always get said out loud. In these shorter episodes, we focus on one practical move advisors can use right away. This one is about what to say in those first 90 seconds when advisor change shifts the whole meeting.
Because this is one of those moments where the wrong first move can add pressure really fast, even when the advisor means well.
If the advisor moves too quickly into bios, process, or reassurance, the client may hear the words and still not feel any steadier. And that's the first job here. Lower the uncertainty. Make continuity feel real. Help the client feel like they don't have to carry the transition by themselves.
So let's make this really practical. What should the opening actually sound like?
I'd keep it simple and human. Something like this. I know a change like this can raise questions that are not always easy to say out loud. Before we get into details, I want to make sure this feels clear, steady, and well handled for you. We don't have to cover everything at once. Let's start with what feels most important to you as we make this transition.
That's good. It feels calm, but it doesn't feel vague.
Right, it works because it does a few important things right away. It shows the client this change may feel bigger than it looks. It lowers pressure, and it shows you're not skipping past trust just to get into the details. That's it. Clients usually don't judge a transition just by the explanation. They judge it by how it feels. Do they feel informed, remembered, included? Do the actions match the words?
Okay, so after that opening, what are the best questions to ask?
I'd go with the strongest questions for this moment. First, what would help this feel steady and well handled for you? Second, as we make this transition, what feels most important for me to understand about you, your family, and how you want to be supported? Third, what would help this feel like a smooth transition rather than a disruption?
Those are strong because they help the client talk about what matters most without having to force it into the language of a problem.
Right, you're creating space for the client to say what matters early before it turns into hesitation or distance. And that matters because problems in advisor change usually start quietly, not with some big objection, but with more uncertainty, more watchfulness, and a little less openness than before.
So what should the advisor be listening for in those answers?
3 things. First, listen for what matters most for the client to keep. That might be responsiveness. It might be understanding their family. It might be not having to repeat their whole story. Second, listen for where the real uncertainty is. Sometimes the client asks a practical question, but underneath it is really a trust question. Who owns the relationship now? Will anything get missed? Will this still feel personal? Third, listen for whether the household is aligned, because in advisor change, one person may look comfortable while someone else is quietly unconvinced.
That's such a big one, because if the spouse or partner is quieter in the room, it would be really easy to miss that.
It would. And then the transition can look stable when it really isn't. Just because the paperwork is shared doesn't mean the trust is.
That's a great line.
It matters because the first 90 seconds aren't just about opening the meeting well. They're about helping the relationship start on steadier ground.
Okay, so let's say the advisor asks those questions and gets a mix of practical and emotional answers. How do they close the opening without making it too big?
I'd close with something that gives the conversation a little structure and helps the client feel less overwhelmed. Something like this. That helps a lot. Let's keep this simple. We'll start with what matters most to you, make clear what is changing and what is staying the same, and leave today with one clear next step so this feels more manageable.
Right, that works. It gives shape without sounding canned.
It does, and that one clear next step really matters. The goal of the opening isn't to solve the whole transition, it's to make those first few minutes steady enough that the client can stop bracing a little.
Can you give a quick example of what that next step might be?
Sure, it could be, before our next meeting, I'm going to send you a simple summary of what stays consistent, what changes, and who you can contact for what. Or, let's schedule a follow-up that includes your spouse, so both of you can hear how support will work going forward. Or, I'm going to reflect back the parts of your history and preferences that matter most, so this doesn't feel like you're starting over.
That's really helpful because it lets the client actually feel the continuity, not just hear about it.
Yes, and I think that's the thread running through all of this. The opening matters because it sets the emotional direction of the meeting. The questions matter because they surface what the client is really carrying. And the next step matters because it turns reassurance into something the client can actually feel.
Right. So by the time you close that first part of the meeting, the client should feel less alone, less pressured, and a little clearer on what happens next.
Exactly. Not fully resolved, just steadier. Because in advisor change, that's often what trust needs first. Not a perfect explanation, a strong start.
If this conversation made you think differently about how to open an advisor change meeting, share it with another advisor who cares about making these moments feel steadier, clearer, and more personal from the start.
And if you want the full script, question set, and practical tools for handling moments like this well, it's all in the Advisor Change Transition Playbook Suite for advisors.
Because when trust is under pressure, the first job isn't to explain more. It's to help the client feel that they're still in good hands.
Thanks for listening to Advising Humans.
We'll see you next time.